The eye is far more than just an instrument of vision. In ancient traditions, it symbolized a deeper truth. Across the earth, traditions speak of a third eye, not only in ancient Asian cultures, but also in those of Europe, the Middle East, and the Americas. Contrary to common belief, it is not exclusive to India. It is also found among the Egyptians, Aztecs, and Celts. Curiously, no historian or archaeologist addresses the existence of the third eye outside Asia. No historical studies have explored its presence in the Americas, Europe, or the Middle East, despite numerous discoveries. Across the globe, the third eye represented a portal to enlightenment and inner awakening, making it one of the most widespread spiritual traditions on Earth. While it was thought to exist solely in Asia, the Americas hold some of the most diverse forms of the third eye, found in great numbers among the Olmecs, Toltecs, Mayas, Zapotecs, Aztecs, Incas, and especially pre-Incan cultures, much like the Aryan and Egyptian civilizations. This shared culture is not a coincidence. It is false and profoundly naive to think that such different and geographically distant peoples developed the tradition of the third eye, independently and by chance, without drawing from a deeper common source. The oldest civilizations were interconnected because they were founded by the same race of people. During primordial times, the Aryan Nordic race migrated across thousands of kilometers, establishing colonies. The Vedic writings, particularly the hymns of the Rig Veda and Atharva Veda, some of humanity's oldest texts, describe interconnected civilizations with transoceanic contacts tens of thousands of years ago. These texts suggest that the Aryans mastered navigation and possessed fleets that traversed oceans to explore unknown peoples. The anthropologist and navigator Thor Heyerdahl has demonstrated the feasibility of such voyages, even with rudimentary vessels, proving that ancient peoples had the ability to travel between continents. This is why the third eye is found everywhere. It was taught and spread by this Atlantean race wherever they went. The oldest legends of India, Mesopotamia, Asia, and Mesoamerica recount the arrival of human demigods, bearded, golden-haired, and blue-eyed, always accompanied by their loyal warrior builders with white skin. The magnificent Sikan goldsmithing illustrates the pre-Columbian people's reverence for their ruling elite, where the sun god, despite being located over 15,000 kilometers away from India, is also depicted with a third eye. Absolutely fascinating. However, official history would rather have you believe that our ancestors were uncultured prehistoric men who barely mastered language. This notion is deliberately instilled to keep you satisfied with your current state, preventing you from realizing that we are living in a cycle of decadence. In reality, most of the spiritual centers built thousands of years ago in the Americas, Europe, North Africa, and Asia centers that show striking similarities in their configuration are ancient Atlantean relics. According to certain esotericists, the Atlanteans belonged to a cycle of incarnation that was still highly spiritual, enabling them to perceive not only the physical world but also higher spheres of consciousness, such as intuition and self-perception from an external point of view. An exceedingly difficult exercise for modern humanity. The Atlanteans served as spiritual guides to the primitive peoples. Their occult knowledge of the third eye is known in its oldest form as Trinitra. Trinitra originates from the Aryan root tri, meaning the number 3, which later gave rise to the concept of the Trinity. However, this Trinity is not the Christian one, but the original Trinity. the fusion of the body, soul, and spirit, opening the way to a higher dimension of reality. In metaphysics, the Trinity resolves the problem of duality. We are all trapped in duality, positive and negative, good and evil, high and low, black and white, hot and cold. Everything consists of two opposites, much like an atom. To transcend this duality, our ancestors understood the need to reach a third way, a third principle, a unifying central axis that brings harmony to opposites. This axis, symbolized by a superior eye placed above the other two, represents the third eye chakra seen in all cultures. It is located on the forehead because it corresponds to the visible area concealing the pineal gland, which is considered today to be the physical, atrophied remnant of the third eye. In Egypt and Mesopotamia, the third eye was, for priests who used it, a true extrasensory portal to connect with the divine. Sculpted or painted on countless frescoes and pharaonic sarcophagi, this central eye symbolizes the initiate's ability to perceive beyond the physical world. For the Egyptians, it was a channel connecting humans to the spiritual kingdoms. In Aryan India, whose kingdoms maintained close ties with Egypt, the third eye was an essential spiritual component, the seat of intuition and higher consciousness. It is one of the 7 chakras of man. In the Himalayan regions of India, Pakistan, and Nepal, especially in areas like Gandhara, there are hundreds of archaeological remains testifying to the millennia-old presence of the third eye on yogic masters of white ancestry. Among these statues from the Indo-Greek culture are the world's earliest representations of Buddha, featuring a face with distinctly Nordic features. Buddha is said to have originated from the Aryan tribe of the Sakas, and even the official description of the famous 32 characteristics of Buddha mentions that he had blue eyes. All these teachers, deep in contemplation, bearing a mark in the center of their foreheads, possess the third eye. This mark reveals their high level of spiritual elevation. These Aryan Nordic masters were the true yogis who spread their teachings among the Asian tribes during the primordial epochs. Over time, their knowledge transformed and became integrated into later Hinduist and Buddhist doctrines. However, the primitiveness of these peoples led to the dilution and eventual loss of the original teachings in these remote parts of the world, reducing them to a set of deviant folkloric practices. The disappearance of the Aryans from India profoundly changed the country's spiritual landscape. Today's Hinduism bears little resemblance to what it was more than 3,500 years ago. Further north in Europe, the Celts, who shared the same lineage as the Aryans of India, held similar conceptions of the divine. They repeatedly represented the third eye in more subtle ways, such as through human depictions in metalwork and pagan engravings. The Triskelion, or the Germanic rune Tewas, which also stem from the root tree, are archetypal and symbolic representations of the Trinity. These symbols convey concepts of great purity, free from human subjectivity. The runic representation of the Trinity was far more open to the entirety of the living world, and less anthropocentric than the later symbol of the third eye. These ideas were already well known to our ancestors millennia before the Christian Trinity, which is nothing more than an allegory of an older knowledge. The Jews who created Christianity merely compiled a conglomerate of concepts that already existed in pagan cults. These engravings, found in numerous European traditions, are evidence of a time when communication between beings was not conducted through articulated and solely intellectual language as it is today, but through highly evolved intuitive and mediumistic forms that we have since lost. Runes correspond to an ancient age when the distinction between dream and wakefulness in the human mind was not as pronounced, allowing for communication in archetypal, subliminal ways. Part image, part telepathic, closely akin to the astral dimension experienced in dreams. It was only after the dissociation between the subtle and the physical realms that humans began to study magic. The art of manipulating images became something occult, losing its universality. White magic and black magic. It's important to understand that the first spiritual masters of European peoples used runes as living archetypes with which one could interact. Writing, in a sense, was alive, unlike today where it is entirely devoid of soul. In the Americas, cultures that thrived in Mexico, Peru, Colombia, Panama, and even North America through the Mississippi tribes preserved this heritage for a long time. Hence the abundance of objects, symbols, masks, and carved statues bearing the emblem of the third eye. One statue from the Chankay culture shows, on the forehead, the fusion of two beings into a single entity. This union symbolizes the convergence of opposing polarities, masculine and feminine, matter and spirit, to create a superior entity. We are entirely within the concept of the Trinity. Duality merges, giving rise to a third central and immanent principle. Doesn't this remind you of something? The teaching of the Chankay statue mirrors exactly how the living world and the cosmos function. Pay close attention because what follows is of utmost importance. When observing a tree as it grows, you'll notice that the oldest branch splits into two to form the two youngest branches, and so on. What we do not see is that the youngest branches that have recently appeared are not merely divisions of the previous branch. They automatically form a new unity, a new channel, allowing access to the original branch. This is analogous to the Chankay creature, where two beings unite to reach the primordial being. Their apparent duality reveals a higher unity, the Trinity, which is omnipresent, with the plant world serving as a remarkable example. In mathematics, the same principle applies. Unity is always the result of the union of two equal divisions. This concept is fractal in nature. Looking back, we can say that the point of union of two young branches extending from the main stem represents not merely an outward extension of the tree, but, above all, the inner link that enables access to the tree's source. Similarly, humanity should not be viewed as a mere extension of its origin. It is the way to access it. Reality is a mirror. It requires us to invert our logic. This principle, evident in both human and plant life, also applies to our perception of time. The present is not a mere continuation of the past. It is a trinity, a permanent coexistence of the past and the future, unified by the present. The present acts as the alignment point of two opposing principles that merge to form one. Thus, when observing the tree and its branches, it becomes clear that the original branch, which gave rise to the others, is not original simply because it is older than the young shoots. It is original because it embodies the unity through which the new branches thrive. This is not a matter of time, but of structure. Fundamentally, time does not define the origin of a thing. When applied to humanity, this implies that the question of our origin cannot be answered merely from a temporal or chronological perspective. Just as the branches of a tree are structured, the source of an organism's origin is defined by its structure rather than time. At humanity's scale, we too occupy a branch connected to a larger branch, which itself connects to yet another larger branch. Attempting to explore the outermost point of a branch only distances us from the tree's center, The answers we seek lie in understanding how our own structure operates. In this metaphor, the youngest branches are not merely pathways to the source. They also reveal and preserve the memory of the source itself. The tree exists and expresses itself in the present through these branches. Thus, the origin is not a fixed point in time, but a matrix, a source, and a container that generates new forms while remaining integral to them. Nothing exists in isolation. What we perceive as the origin of something is a living relationship with what follows it. This perspective leads to a non-dualistic view. Every part exists only in relation to the whole, and the whole derives its reality from its parts. In Taoism, the Tao is both the origin of all things and the force that continuously flows through them. Much like fractal logic, every fragment contains both the new element of the whole and the entire structure of the whole, reflecting unity in multiplicity. The Tao is not a singular point from which all things emanate, as suggested by the Big Bang theory, but an eternal, cyclical flow. Similarly, in Hinduism, the Trimurti symbolizes creation, preservation, and transformation simultaneously. This reflects the trinitarian principle of the matrix that governs existence. Modern human perception has been fragmented, hypnotized, and divided by a linear material and illusory reality. Yet, spiritual work involves transcending these illusions of separation to perceive the underlying unity in all things. Sacred texts discovered in Tibet over the last century speak of a golden age, an era when humanity knew these truths innately and had no need to articulate them. Those who bore the third eye became symbols of this transgenerational memory, persisting even today. Through successive cycles of ages and reincarnations, humanity has strayed from its initial path, torn between Ahrimanic forces, materialism, and Luciferian forces, excessive individualism, selfishness, material desires, and greed have led to humanity's descent into the density and division of matter. This process resulted in the progressive atrophy of our spiritual faculties, leaving only a latent remnant of our divine potential hidden within the pineal gland. Aryan migrations and their role in transmitting ancient knowledge are deliberately obscured. There is an agenda to extinguish collective memory, control humanity's fall, and fabricate a false history. However, all is not lost. The cycles overlap, and these dormant capacities can be reactivated through an inner quest. Great initiates throughout the ages have shown that a disciplined, ascetic life can restore an advanced state of consciousness. A healthy life, balanced diet, fasting, meditation, and personal elevation are essential to rekindle what we have forgotten. The third eye represents humanity's potential to ascend once again if it chooses the path of awakening, not through dreams but through effort and struggle. This means confronting our demons and actively striving to be free to determine who we are, free in our choices,